Gotta have an injector control pressure issue or something. See how it's just ramping up on its own? ICP duty cycle ramps up right away too. Yeah, she's just like accelerating on her own. It's almost like I got a bad connection or a f***ed up sensor or something. I actually might not be able to make it home. Guys, thanks for joining me on another episode of Henderson Equipment. So, you might hear my truck acting a little sporadically, and I want to explain that to you guys. So I'm going to sit here at a gas station, and my truck's going nuts. It's like ramping up and down, ramping up and down. And maybe a few weeks ago, I noticed this. I figured it was my exhaust back pressure sensor. Because it messes with the turbo. So, and this is a 6-liter diesel, so I took the back pressure sensor off and I cleaned it, reinstalled it, took the shit out of the line, worked beautifully, no issues. So maybe a week went by and my exhaust back pressure sensor, I think, started acting up again, and I was getting this little sporadic RPM changes. So I took it off, cleaned it, issue went away. Here we are again. Couple days later, and I get these kick-ups on my engine RPM. I'm not really blowing a lot of smoke or anything, but just the RPM jumps a little bit. I'm going to drive and listen for the RPM, see if you can hear it. This truck is bitching right now. It's acting so sporadically. I'm actually going to pull over into this park. This thing's acting so weird. I'm gonna put it in park, plug my scanner in, and let's watch what the things do. But it's almost like accelerating on its own. I'm gonna put it in park. Hear that? RPMs are just going like kind of crazy. Look at her go. Man, the truck sounds bad. Thicken voltage is good. Exhaust back pressure. And the truck shut off. Man, truck is just going crazy, shutting off. It's just so sporadic. Fickum voltage has been consistent, so I don't think I'm losing Fickum issues. ICP duty cycle is low, and before it was high. Injector control pressure is cool. Yeah, right now she's stable. Yeah, I think I got a pressure issue or something. Gotta have an injector control pressure issue or something. See how it's just ramping up on its own? ICP duty cycle ramps up right away too. I wonder if it's my injector control pressure sensor. I'm gonna try to make it home. Might be a little hairy, but I'm going to try to make it home. So, she's like doing her own thing here. I'm hoping that after it warms up a little bit, it'll just stop once it gets hot. She just wants to go. Oh, good thing I'm taking back roads home. So, yeah, she's just like accelerating on her own. It's almost like I got a bad connection or a f***ed up sensor or something. I actually might not be able to make it home. This thing is acting so f***ing violently. I noticed it started to blow a little black smoke too. I don't know what the f*** is wrong with this thing. Jesus. Maybe I'll call this video help my 6-liter is violent. So it's been about 10 minutes and truck seems to be running just fine. So it's consistent, RPMs aren't bouncing, it seems to be just fine. So I don't know why, now that it's warmed up, it's not causing any issues. I think that's interesting. Because before, you know, it was dying on me as I was driving, and I'd go to try to start it up, and it would take a long time to crank. So I was like, man, I hope my FICM's not going, but I'm doing my diagnostic test as I'm driving. I got good FICM supply power, my good output power is good on my FICM, you know, so that's good. I feel like if I had a connection issue, I would have it non-stop all the time, but instead, you know, I only have an issue when the truck is cold in a sense. So, but after the truck is hot and warm, she's happy. So, you know, this is not a typical symptom of an oil leak. So, you know, it has me wondering, do I have a fuel problem? Do I have an injector problem that is, you know, causing an issue? But if I have one injector failing, it's not gonna, you know, shut the truck off like it did. So I don't know. I'm probably gonna go home, look under the hood, see if I see anything stupid, and then I'm gonna do new testing early in the morning when the truck's cold, try to replicate the condition and see what happens. So it's the next morning, and I let the truck sit overnight. And before I started, I figured I'd see what codes I got on this thing. I got this cheap little scanner. And let's go vehicle diagnostics. Let's auto ID. Turn the key on. Curious to see what the issue is. All right, let's take a look at what we got here. Read codes. I got one code. Fan speed sensor. So that's the only code I got. Okay. Well, that's no help. Okay. Let's put my meter on voltage. What does it do when I crank? Voltage is good. So that was a good little test. Not to say that my, you know, little computer scanner is bad, but it's not as accurate as the fluke meter. So I'm testing it right at the terminals, and you can see key on, it does drop a little bit, but then when I go to start it, I mean, it doesn't go below 48 volts. And when it's running, it's steady at 48 volts. So that's cool, that's good. that's what you would expect. So I'm going to clean up that little corrosion I see. I think the FICM is just fine. I don't see any issues. No issues with the FICM sync, obviously, because it started. So now we got to dive into a couple other things. I think I'm going to look at the fuel next. It did fire right up, which is good, but I wonder if I got something wonky going on with my fuel. Tell you what, we're getting high tech here. I hope you guys can see this. Got my fuel pressure gauge there. I'm going to turn my key on. When I turn my key on, the fuel pump should already prime. Like I said, I think it should be at least 40 psi. I did put the high pressure blue spring kit in there. I think that jumps at 10 psi, so hopefully we got at least 50 psi. So let's key on. Continue. Okay, see, we're jumping up. PSI is jumping up, so we're above 50 psi, which is cool. And now let's watch this. So FICM internals 48. All right, I'm going to try to crank this over. Let's see what it looks like. Fired right up. Maintaining 50 some psi. Back pressure sensor seems to be reading just fine. ICP looks good. We shut it down. I don't know, we got something very odd going on, to say the least. I'm going to put the engine back together, and I got to go on a service call, so I think I'll leave my programmer plugged in, go to my service call, drive around, see if it acts up, and go from there. But something is clearly off. It's been about a week or so. Probably can tell because my beard is long. This thing's been acting wonky, and I hate when you have to like troubleshoot you know, sensor issues or fuel issues or electrical issues. I really don't think we got a mechanical issue here, like highly doubtful. But I am pretty sure I either have a fuel issue or a sensor issue. So right now it's okay, it's stable, but it's like been all over the map. I mean, right now it's acting okay, but I'm gonna let this thing warm up and then see if it starts sputtering again. Just hitting park and it's starting to go crazy. Watch the RPMs, they'll bounce. You know, seeing how wonky the injection control pressure is getting, I mean, it's just way too sporadic. Wait till it drops down to like 600, the truck freaks out. And it should, because it's like, whoa, I don't want to die. See that? And you can hear it. Something's got to be wrong with the IP sensor. You know what? Let's shut this off. Alright. Let's shut that off. Let's actually, you know what we can do? We can unplug the sensor. So if I unplug this sensor, all right. So it's not too good. Well, I should say it's good. Like I was looking for like oil on the connector, because a lot of times when the diaphragm ruptures, oil gets on the connector and then it shorts out. So, I mean, I guess the sensor itself could just be bad and just not leaking through. I don't know. That kind of doesn't make sense. So let's see if this thing starts. And so I'm getting ahead of myself, and I figured I'd stop and explain. So I unplugged my injection control pressure sensor. And by unplugging it, we'll see if the engine starts and if it's stable. If it starts and it's stable, then I know that I definitely don't have a mechanical problem and I don't have a problem with my IPR valve. Now, how would I know that? Because, so the IPR sensor, the way it works is it sees what the real pressure in the oil rail is, and based on if it's high or low, it directly controls the IPR sensor or the IPR valve. And the IPR valve will modulate in and or open and closed depending on what the demand is. So if you're closing it, you're going to create a lot more pressure, and the injector will hit a lot harder. So by unplugging that sensor, the computer's going to do a basic quick check, and it's going to see that the sensor isn't there or it's broken. And if it's broken, it's going to default to basic settings. Depending on what the RPM is, the computer will say, hey, based on my RPM, the pressure should be this. And then it'll manually change the IPR valve. It's not the most efficient, it's not real time, but it gives you a best educated guess, and the truck should run just fine, really. Alright, so the truck started, which is good. And let's look at our data. So taking a look at the data here, you can see the injection control pressure is stable. And so because it's reading stable, it's saying, hey, I believe based on my RPM, you should be at 870 PSI. And so it's going to keep the IPR valve at 0.33. Now you'll see this thing fluctuates from 870 to 869. You know, that's normal. That's just a bouncing tolerance of that probe. So it's really not changing. Thickness ignition is a little low. You know, it should be kicking up, and there it goes. So the voltage regulator just kicked on my alternator. But yeah, right now it's running pretty good. Let me give it some RPM. And so based on the demand, it's saying, hey, I need to increase. Isn't that cool? So it makes you wonder, like, hey, do I really need the IPR sensor? And honestly, you truly do. If you want to be pulling and get your best fuel economy, yes, you need the IPR sensor. Otherwise, you'll be overfueling the system, and it always overfuels. It doesn't underfuel. Yeah, so far it's running pretty good without the IPR sensor. So this is leading me to believe that the IPR sensor is in fact bad. So I went to the store and I got a new sensor. I actually need my truck and the gooseneck tomorrow because I have to pick up this big telehandler for a customer, and obviously I need the truck running, and for optimal performance I need to replace the sensor. So went out to Napa, got a replacement sensor, and now I'm going to throw the sensor in, reconnect it, and we'll see if that makes a difference. It should. Things are always in a tough spot. So I disconnected the IPR sensor. I need to get a socket on here, and you're also going to need to disconnect your glow plug harness. So I like to use the flathead. And while pushing down on the tab, I rotate it, and it comes right out. Nice. All right, now that I got some clearance, we can clear that. And let's spin this puppy off. Now, don't freak out if some oil comes out, because this threads right into your oil rail. Here's my sensor. So you can see it's full of oil. I believe this is the problem, but we are going to throw a new one in and see. Let's start it and see if the IPR sensor is more stable. Okay, we just plugged her in. I did not reset, so the check engine light's still going to be on. Key on, turn the vehicle ignition, okay, hit continue. Let's take a look at what data it gives us. Yeah, come on. All right, we're looking for... Oh man, we gotta reset all this stuff. So let's go engine load, exhaust, engine oil temp, back pressure, command gear. We don't need that. Item. I wonder why this got reset. So ignition, control pressure, approved. That's what we want to see. Instant PSI, cool battery voltage, and let's look at the FICM too. FICM logic power, that's what we care about. No. Injector voltage, sorry, that's what we want. All right. Airflow, we don't care about that. What else we want to look at? Okay. So we got FICM ignition, FICM voltage, battery voltage, injector control pressure. So this bottom one is what we want to look at. We want something more stable. Again, we need 500 psi just to start. All right, so you can see how the injector control pressure is bouncing more than it did when it's unplugged. That's good. It should bounce a little bit. Yeah, and it's already more stable, so, you know, it's bouncing what? Let's see, you got 665 to 670 psi. That is much more normal. A 5 psi jump is not going to change anything. Now, also, I want to remind you guys, there's a little air pocket on the new sensor, so we have to wish through that. But it's responding well. So I'm going to let this idle for a little bit. I want to see this injector control pressure go to 550 psi, roughly, you know, when it's warm. And then I want to see the IPR valve at 0.22 or 0.23. So let's change exhaust back pressure to... VGT turbo, where is it? IPD duty cycle, that's what we want. Approve. And 0.25, so you can see that the valve is a little bit open. If it was fully closed, it'd be 0.85. If it's fully closed, it's 0.85. If it's fully open, it's 0.22, I believe. So that's what I'd like to see, around 0.22 to 0.23. So let's let it warm up and see what it looks like. So it's been, I don't know, 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. I was, you know, messing around in the garage. So, but coming back, we're at 5. So you can see we're bouncing between 581 to 578. Perfectly normal. That's how it should be. ICP duty cycle is 0.23. If the truck was super hot, it should go down to 0.22. I shouldn't say super hot. If it's like at fully operational temperature, it should go down to 0.23. So I'm going to give it a little bit of throttle here, and you will see the ICP duty cycle peak up as I give it throttle. Now, if I just step on it, ICP duty cycle, so that's my IPR valve regulating. Yeah, she's good. She's real tight. She's acting perfectly normal. So, like I said, 0.85 is fully closed, and that's if I really have a leak or if I'm really romping on it. But if I'm romping on it, I think the highest I've really seen is like 0.55 or 0.6. So, yeah, I think we're looking pretty good, much more stable than we were. So that's pretty much the end of this video. I do want to thank you guys for coming and watching me troubleshoot my truck, which is a Ford with a 6-liter diesel engine. I think it's interesting to know that, or just to point out that how a small tiny sensor like this, which is a pressure sensor, can make your truck act so sporadic. And as you saw in the video, my RPMs were bouncing all over the place because it couldn't get a stable reading of what the injector pressure is. And this, which regulates the oil pressure rail, directly controls the IPR valve. So the truck thinks that it's really low, so it's got to close the IPR valve, which that increased pressure allows that injector to hit a lot harder with diesel into the engine, and then the engine goes sporadic. So another point I want to make out is for a lot of engines and diesel engines and for your own equipment, I really encourage you guys to get a computer reader, so like I'm using this little scanning tool to read my truck. I'll leave a link in my description below, but I really encourage you guys to get something and purchase something similar that works for your vehicle, whether it's the 6-liter diesel or something else. But by me watching and seeing the readings, I'm able to do further troubleshooting to really understand what the issue is. A lot of people think there's 10 million things wrong with their vehicles, and they start doing the parts canon and start changing this, changing this, changing this, when all you need to do is take a look at some readings, see how your truck is acting, and by doing that little investigation and troubleshooting, you can save yourself a lot of money and a lot of time. So anyway, that's a wrap for this video. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you guys next time.